They had a seemingly perfect marriage, filled with love and happiness.
Anne Jones was a faithful wife to her husband Robert. They had a seemingly perfect marriage, filled with love and happiness. However, one momentous evening, everything changed. Robert arrived home from work, his face clouded with an unusual gravity. Anne sensed something was wrong immediately. She greeted him with a warm smile, asking about his day. Instead of responding, Robert announced that he was leaving her. He has a new relationship with a younger girl, and he's planning to marry her. Stunned and heartbroken, Anne couldn't comprehend the sudden revelation. Desperate to salvage their relationship, she begged him to reconsider, but Robert remained resolute. In a fit of anger and despair, Anne grabbed a frozen leg of lamb from the refrigerator and struck Robert on the back of his head. Anne felt despair after she killed her husband, Robert. She left him lifeless on the floor. Anne realizes her life would be ruined if caught, and she comes up with an escape plan to save herself from the law. She meticulously cleans up the scene and removes any traces of the crime. Anne, a widow, calls the police after finding her husband dead. She pretends to be shocked and distraught, sobbing into the phone. "Please come quickly. Something terrible has happened. Robert, he's dead." The officers arrive, but they find nothing substantial. They search the house, but they fail to notice the lamb leg in the oven. Anne offers the officers a meal, a leg of lamb, as a gesture of gratitude. "You must be hungry after all this work. Please, have some dinner. It's the least I can do." The officers devour the lamb, erasing any trace of her involvement. Anne sat alone in the quiet house, realizing she may have lost her husband, but gained her freedom. As the investigation stalled, Anne's confidence grew, and she became bolder in her actions. She discovered she was pregnant with Robert's child, bringing both joy and trepidation. She decided to keep the baby, hoping for a new start. She sold the house and moved to another city, changing her name and appearance. She found a job as a librarian and made some friends. She tried to forget her past and focus on her future. However, a knock on her door shattered her illusion of safety. A stern detective confronted her, holding a photo of Robert. "Mrs. Jones, or should I say, Mrs. Smith, I've been looking for you for a long time. You see, I was one of the officers who investigated your husband's murder. However, I never bought your story. I knew you were hiding something, and I finally found out what it was." He pointed at her belly. "This baby is Robert's, isn't it? You killed him because he wanted to leave you for another woman. Then you invited us for dinner. How sick can you be?" Anne tried to remain calm, but her facade began to crack. She felt a surge of fear and anger, mixed with maternal instinct. She denied everything, but the detective was persistent. He threatened to arrest her and take away her child. He said he had enough evidence to prove her guilt. As the detective's gaze diverted, Anne seized the opportunity and locked the door. Racing through the house, knowing she only had moments to escape before the detective could regain his composure. She grabbed her purse and keys and ran to the garage. She got into her car and drove away as fast as she could, leaving behind her life, memories, and secrets. Anne then sought refuge in a small, remote town, seeking solitude and preparing for her child's arrival. She met Sarah, a warm-hearted woman who owned a bed and breakfast. Sarah offered support and guidance to Anne, who told her she was escaping from an abusive husband. They formed a bond, and Anne brought her daughter into the world, whispering promises of love and protection. The love and warmth of their small community stayed with Anne's daughter as she grew up over the years. She was smart and beautiful, with Robert's eyes and Anne's smile. Anne loved her more than anything in the world, and she did everything she could to make her happy. However, fate had a way of catching up, and rumors of her past deeds resurfaced. Suddenly, an old newspaper article about Robert's murder was found in a nearby library. The article mentioned Anne as a suspect who had disappeared without a trace. The librarian recognized Anne from the photo and alerted the authorities. She made the difficult decision to leave once again. The law or other harmful people could discover Anne and her daughter at any moment, so Anne had to take swift action to secure their safety. Anne packed their belongings and left the cottage behind, bidding farewell to Sarah, who had become like a mother to her. With her daughter, she ventured into the unknown again, determined to shield her from the consequences of her own actions. Anne's heart brimmed with both fear and hope as she faced the new challenges ahead. She was determined to ensure their freedom and happiness. Anne is roaming on a nomadic journey to protect herself and her daughter from authorities and private investigators who are still searching for them. She faces various challenges, including evading capture, financial struggles, emotional turmoil, trust issues, and limited stability and a sense of belonging. She must employ strategies like changing identities, altering appearances, and utilizing hidden routes. Anne must also navigate trust issues. Anne is trying to balance her emotions with her daughter's needs. They also face challenges in providing education and social development as they face potential dangers in their nomadic lifestyle. Anne must find support and form alliances without compromising her safety. Her unwavering love for her daughter and desire for a better future will drive her to overcome these obstacles. By focusing on her resilience, adaptability, and determination, Anne hopes to find a place where they can finally be safe and happy. The moral of the story. The moral of the story is that crime does not pay and that one's actions have consequences. Anne Jones may have escaped the law for a while, but she could not escape her own guilt and fear. She had to live a life of constant hiding and lying, never knowing when she would be caught. She also had to face the possibility of losing her daughter, who was the only thing that gave her happiness and hope. Anne Jones's story shows that violence is not a solution and that it only leads to more problems and suffering.
I highly doubt that I am the perfect husband. I have a stressful job, and I know I come home a little cranky. Sometimes I may not be the best earner either. I'm certainly not a millionaire. But we're still doing well. We have a nice house, 2 luxury cars, my wife has a closet full of beautiful clothes, and our 8-year-old daughter Jennifer has tons of expensive toys. I guess when it really comes down to it, I'm just a simple, hard-working guy who loves his wife and family. Linda and I have been married for almost 12 years now, and for the most part, those years have been heaven on earth. I say for the most part because in the last couple of months, something just wasn't adding up between Linda and me. It's hard to say exactly, but she's been acting strange, kind of aloof. On many occasions, for no reason at all, she would pick on things I did or said. It just wasn't like her. I tried to discuss it. I asked if she was mad at me for some unknown reason, but like all women, she just said nothing was wrong, except that she was a little tired or having a bad day. At first, I thought I would just give her some time to work out what was bothering her. But time went on and her aloof attitude was getting old and downright annoying. Aside from her attitude, as I'm sure any married couple knows, you can't have a problematic relationship with your spouse without it carrying over into the bedroom. I've always tried my best to keep our personal life spontaneous and exciting. I'm a romantic at heart, so sometimes I would start foreplay by bringing home a dozen roses after work. In the past, such gestures had never prevented me from getting laid later that night. But lately, my acts of love had been met with nothing more than a thank you and a kiss on the cheek. Instead of accepting my signs of affection for what they were, she almost thought it was some lame attempt to make up for what I'd done wrong. It had been weeks since Linda had stopped having sex, and my attempts were met with either "I'm not in the mood" or the proverbial headache. On those rare occasions when she gave in to my pleas, she would lay there while I did all the work. Over time, I realized that I was beginning to mentally detach myself from the situation. I would come home, play with my daughter, and give my wife as little attention as possible. Of course, all of this was only making the situation worse. I was desperate, so when I had a minute or two at work, I started going over everything in my head. I remembered when and how it all started. I tried to remember if I had done anything to cause a change in Linda's attitude, but nothing came out. I ran a dozen different scenarios over and over in my head, trying to come up with some sort of cause and effect analysis. The more I thought, the more one unthinkable trigger for Linda's behavior surfaced. I wondered if it was possible. Could my wife be cheating on me? I told myself that no, she would never do that, but every time I tried to put two and two together, I got three: me, Linda, and the lover. I tried to convince myself that it just wasn't possible, but you know what they say about curiosity. I'd done some reading on what kinds of things to look for, differences in behavioral patterns, clothing, schedules, and the like. Truth be told, I really hadn't noticed Linda wearing any nice clothes or dressing sexier, but I only see her when I get home after work, so who knows how she dresses during the day. I also had no idea what kind of schedule she kept. She's always running here and there. For what? Again, who knows? However, when it came to changing her attitude, some of the symptoms seemed awfully familiar. I considered hiring a private investigator, but I had no real evidence. All I had were suspicions, and certainly nothing to justify the expense of a private investigator. So I started investigating on my own. I did little things like calling home in the middle of the day. Sometimes she was home, and sometimes she wasn't. Then I got an old outdoor surveillance camera and discreetly installed it under the eaves of the garage. I hooked it up to a tape recorder I had hidden on the back shelf behind the paint cans. I wanted to see if any strange cars drove up to the house, but there hadn't been any in 2 weeks. I did see my wife leave the house a few times, and then tell me she had been home all day, but she hadn't been gone long enough for anything to have happened, unless her boyfriend was a one-minute miracle. Maybe it was just a small errand that she considered too insignificant to mention. It certainly wasn't proof of an illicit liaison. Time passed, and although I still had absolutely no proof, any handkerchiefs, my suspicions grew stronger. Her mood was worsening, and we hadn't made love in a couple of weeks. I was already starting to get angry. Our 12th anniversary was approaching, and I saw this as an opportunity. I wanted to get out and have some fun. It had been a long time since Linda and I had last had dinner and dancing. Maybe, just maybe, it would put some spark back into our marriage. I was certainly willing to give it a try. We arranged for Jennifer to spend the night at my parents' house so we could have some real fun with no time constraints. I made reservations at Plato's, one of Linda's favorite restaurants. She took me under her arm as the maitre d' escorted us to our table, and I hoped some of that old magic would return. But for some reason it seemed a little strained. We ordered a bottle of wine at dinner, and I could see that Linda was starting to relax. She was starting to act like her old self again. Our conversation was light and playful. After dinner, I could tell my beautiful wife couldn't wait to go out and kick up her heels. I wanted to go to a new dance club that opened a couple of months ago, but Linda talked me into going to the same place we usually go. It was a nice place with cozy lighting and a nice cozy dance floor. They catered to a slightly older crowd and played music that a person could actually dance to, so she didn't have to twist my arm too much. Now, I'm not a bad dancer, if I do say so myself. In fact, that's one of the things that brought Linda and I together. We both loved to dance. We found a nice private table for two, ordered a couple of drinks, took one sip each, and then walked over to show the others that there was more to dancing than 2 steps. It was just like old times. We were both having a great time. We were a little tired after almost an hour of dancing, so we went back to our table to take a break. I plopped into a chair, but Linda took a sip of wine from her glass without sitting down, then excused herself and went to the ladies' room. I watched, with visions of carnal bliss yet to come, as my beautiful wife gracefully swayed her hips with each step she took. When I finally took my eyes off my wife's perfect ass, I realized that I wasn't the only one whose attention she was attracting. Sitting all alone at a corner table on the other side of the dance floor was a very good-looking guy who was watching Linda's every move.
For a second, I thought she met his gaze and wondered if they knew each other. When she disappeared into the restroom, I could have sworn the guy was looking right at me, with a smug expression on his face. But from this distance, it was hard to tell for sure. The place we were at was strictly a dance club, and I wondered why the guy had come alone, but then figured that, like Linda, his date was probably in the ladies' room. I watched him with the edge of my eye, waiting for my beautiful wife to return. Again, as she passed him on her way back, I was sure I saw them both smiling and making eyes at each other. Suddenly, all my suspicions came back. Mind you and him dancing together, I might have agreed. But now, no way in hell, she said now with a harshness in her voice. Harry, you're being silly. There's nothing going on between this gentleman and me. And yes, you and I are married, but you don't own me. I'm not your slave. And if I want to dance with someone, I will. I couldn't believe my wife was talking to me like that. She had never shown me such disrespect. I was seething with anger, and any hopes of having a nice romantic evening with my wife went out the window. However, I was going to try to contain my anger. As I tried to calm down, she continued, Honey, I just want to have a little fun, she said now in a much sweeter tone. Harry, it's our anniversary. I want to have fun too, but with you. And sitting here watching you dance with someone else is not my idea of fun, especially when I asked you not to dance with him. Now, you're right, I don't own you, and I can't stop you from dancing with him, but if you do, you better ask him to take you home because I'll be gone. After 12 years together, I can read Linda like a book. When she looked at my face, her face expressed anger. I was surprised she couldn't see the same in mine. Well, it's rude to make this gentleman stand here while we bicker, so I'm going to dance with him, and we'll talk about it when I get back. I cut her off. The jerk had a triumphant smirk on his face as he held out his hand for her to take. Linda took his hand, stood up, and they walked out onto the dance floor. I'm pretty sure they didn't even see me leave, because I was out the door before they even started dancing. I was already 8 blocks away when my cell phone rang. Where the hell are you? Linda asked in a very remorseful voice. I'm on my way home to pack, I said. Pack? What the hell are you talking about? Pack a bag? Where are you going? I don't know yet. All I know is I'm getting the hell away from you. I've had enough of this. You can't be serious, Harry. It was just a dance, one lousy dance. You're going to throw 12 years of marriage to the wind because of a dance? It had nothing to do with dancing, Linda. Why would you want to stay married to a man you don't love or respect? Honestly, I haven't caught you, but I'm pretty sure you're cheating on me. I suspect with the guy you just danced with. I saw the way you were looking at each other on the way to the bathroom. When he approached our table, he gave me the same respect a guy gives the husband of a woman he has none of.
Harry, she said in a softer voice now, I do love you and respect you. I told you there was nothing going on between that guy and me. I would never cheat on you. Why would you even think that? You've got to be kidding me. We haven't made love in over 2 weeks. When we do, you don't even participate. You just lie there. You've been grumpy and testy for the last 2 months. And don't tell me you respect me, because you don't. You proved it tonight. If you're not having an affair, you're faking it pretty damn well. There was nothing but silence on the other end of the wire. Finally, I'm sorry, Harry. I didn't realize. I'm sorry for the way I acted. I'm sorry about tonight. I'm sorry I gave you reason to think I was having an affair. She was quiet for a moment. I think I did look at that guy on the way to the ladies' room. He was a handsome man. I noticed him when we were dancing, and I think we saw each other at the same time. But I'm not having an affair with him. Please, darling, please just come back and get me, and we'll talk about it. No, like I said, I'm done. I told you if you danced with this guy, you'd have to find your own way home, and I meant it. I'm pulling up to our house right now. I'll be out of here by the time you get home. If you're having an affair, maybe you should just go home with your lover and forget about me. Honey, please believe me, I'm not having an affair. Please listen, I'll take a cab, but please just stay there until I get home. Now I recognize the desperation in her voice, different from before. We have to talk this over. Please, I'll be home soon, she pleaded before hanging up. I pulled into our driveway, went upstairs, and packed my bag.
I left the house exactly 12 minutes later. I wondered if she was really going to take a cab home, or if the jerk was going to drop her off. So I drove a block away, turned off my headlights, and waited to see. About 15 minutes later, a yellow cab pulled into the driveway. Linda got out of the car and ran into the house. I saw what I wanted to see and headed for the motel. "I'm still not convinced, Linda, not yet," I told her. "After what I've been through, the bad attitude, the lack of any passion in the bedroom, the disrespect, I need time." "I understand," she said quietly. "I need to go to the motel after work and get my stuff, but I'll be home tonight." There was silence on her part for a moment before she spoke again. "I love you, Harry. I'm so sorry for the way I've treated you. I don't want to lose you." I can't say that I still had no reservations. I was still angry, and even with all the evidence to the contrary, I just couldn't shake the feeling that Linda knew that guy in the dance hall. After work, I gathered my clothes and went home. Jennifer came running and almost tackled me in the doorway. She asked where I had been. I explained that I had been out of town for a while. Obviously, she didn't know anything about our problems. Linda was there too. She put her arms around me and showered me with kisses. I kissed her back passionately. After all, I couldn't deny that I loved my wife. That was 2 years ago, and married life was great again. Linda was once again the woman I married, both in and out of the bedroom. A couple of months ago, she threw me a surprise birthday party. We had always treated Linda's birthday as a special day in the past, but we didn't start celebrating mine until after I got home. Last night was our 14th wedding anniversary. This time, Linda planned the whole evening. When I got home from work, she surprised me with dinner theater tickets to see Man of La Mancha, one of my favorite plays. Then we drove to the lakeshore and walked along the beach. The moon had risen, and there was a warm breeze blowing off the lake. "Thank you for a wonderful anniversary," I said as I wrapped my arms around her and pulled her to me. What's this?" she asked shyly, feeling the erection in my pants. "I think we should go home and do something about it," I agreed. And half an hour later, we were in our bedroom, ripping each other's clothes off. As it turned out, Linda hadn't given up the initiative for the night. To this day, I don't know if she cheated on me or not. I guess I'll never know for sure. What I do know is that I'm glad I decided to come home. As though according to the calendar, spring came a couple of weeks early, this was the first day Linda was able to leave the house without her winter coat. Finally, another Chicago winter had made history. Stepping outside, Linda breathed in the fresh scent of morning dew left over from a gentle nighttime April downpour. She smiled as she remembered the warm, safe feeling she had experienced lying in bed in her husband's strong arms, listening to the soft rhythm of the rain. On the way to the car, she noticed beautiful blue wildflowers growing on the lawn. She was delighted by the sight of them. No matter how bad the winter had been, they persevered, striving for a new beginning, a new lease on life each spring. Linda hummed along to the radio in the car as she drove to a small cafe to meet Kathy, a good friend she hadn't seen in a long time. They had sons the same age as Jennifer, and they had met years ago at a school event, hit it off, and had been good friends ever since. Kathy was the first to arrive and had already taken a small table in the corner by the window. They waved at each other and smiled through the glass as Linda passed by on her way to the front door. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee wafted through the busy cafe as Linda approached the line of customers waiting to order a cup of Colombian heaven. Seeing her friend approaching, Kathy stood up. "Hi!" Both girls giggled at the same time, hugging each other before taking their seats. "It's been a while," Linda said. "How are you doing?" Kathy's eyes were bright and cheerful as she answered her friend. The girls chatted, reminiscing about old times and laughing at the funny things that happened at some of the school events they attended. They asked each other about their children, and both mentioned how fast they were growing up. They had been talking for an hour when Kathy leaned over the table and lowered her voice. "Linda," Kathy said in almost a whisper, "can you keep a secret?" "Yes, of course," Linda replied, gesturing as if locking her lips with a key. "What's the matter?" "I shouldn't even be telling you this, but I have to tell someone or I'll burst. I've been, well, sort of dating this guy." Linda lifted her head from her coffee and looked her friend in the eye. "What do you mean by kind of dating this guy? Are you having an affair?" Kathy pursed her lips in a half-mischievous smile. "Well, we haven't actually done anything yet, but I'm thinking about it. I know it's inappropriate, but I feel so alive when I'm with him. His name is Cody. Isn't that a beautiful name? I know I shouldn't do this, but I really like this guy, and I'm afraid he'll lose interest if I don't sleep with him." Linda's expression changed. She looked at her friend and decided to take a chance. "Kathy, you remember a couple of years ago when Harry and I were having problems? He actually left me for a while, remember?" "Yeah, I know. But I never knew what it was all about. You never talked about it, and I didn't want to pry." "I've never told anyone, and you have to promise me you'll never say a word of what I'm about to tell you to a living soul." She waited for a clear signal from her friend before she spoke another word. It took a second, but Kathy realized what Linda was waiting for. Yes, of course, Linda, I promise." "If this ever gets out, I'm pretty sure it will ruin my marriage. That's why I haven't told anyone. But, well, you need to hear this, Kathy, before you ruin your own marriage." At that moment, a waitress came over with fresh coffee. She waited until she finished filling their cups before she began. "I'm probably no different than most other married women. After 12 years of marriage, I felt, well, I don't know, bored. Everything was becoming so routine. It was strange. After all these years, I looked around and asked myself, what am I doing? Where am I going? Nowhere. I'm stuck here. I have no real life for myself." "Exactly," Kathy interjected. I know how you feel." "Kat, I'm sure most women go through the same thing. It's not that you don't love your husband. I love Harry with all my heart. But, well, suddenly I felt like it wasn't enough, like something was missing. I think I was really starting to fall into a mild depression. Nothing seemed fun anymore, even sex. It wasn't really anyone's fault. Hell, Harry was sagging in front of me, especially in the bedroom. I should have been the happiest person in the world, but nothing seemed to help. Even the school events were awful." Linda took a sip of coffee and looked at Kathy, checking to see if her story had gotten through to her. She could see that she had captured her attention, so she continued. "Then I met Terry." You were having an affair?" Linda nodded slightly. "Yes, an emotional affair. I got wise to it before it became physical, thank God," she said with a sigh. "I was in a little grocery store on Marshall Avenue one day, and I saw him. God, Kathy, he was gorgeous. Rugged good looks, sand-colored blonde hair, sparkling blue eyes like Robert Redford's. He was tall, too, over 6 feet, I'm sure. And even in his clothes, I could see he had a good build. I knew I was staring, but I couldn't bring myself to look away until he caught me, that is. I blushed when he looked at me and smiled. We started flirting, it was exciting, and seemed so vicious. I finally came to my senses. I needed to go shopping, so I walked through the grocery department. When I reached out to grab some tomatoes, I ran right into him. He looked at me with his big blue eyes and gorgeous smile and said, "Hi." Kathy, I hate to say this, but I felt myself getting wet between my legs. It was so embarrassing. I prayed he couldn't smell the odor coming from me. I know I was blushing again. He held out his hand and introduced himself. He immediately noticed my wedding rings, but they didn't seem to deter him from trying to spend time with me. It was very flattering to think that a guy like that might be interested in me.
Now Kathy was catching every word in her friend's story. It was so familiar. I almost threw his card away as I was leaving the store. I thought, yeah, right, I'm going to call you and we're going to have a really hot romantic love affair, and then my husband is going to kill us both. "You didn't?" her fascinated friend asked. "I didn't throw away his card. I stuck it in my purse. Hell, all the way home, all I could think about was Terry. Harry came home as I was putting the groceries away. I already felt so guilty that I jumped on him when he tried to help. I think it was some unconscious defense mechanism. Poor Harry just asked if something was wrong. Oh my God, what did you say? Of course I lied. I told him I was just a little tired from shopping. Truth be told, I was secretly walking on cloud 9.
Anyway, Linda continued, I knew I shouldn't have called him. It was wrong. I also knew that because of the way I was feeling, I was very vulnerable. I kept telling myself, no, 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 but I couldn't help myself. I found one of the last payphones in town and dialed the number on the card he gave me. We agreed to have lunch the next day. With anxious anticipation, Kathy waited until her friend took another sip of coffee before continuing. We agreed to have lunch the next day, Linda continued, her voice low but steady. On the way to the restaurant, my emotions were all over the place. I was terrified and excited at the same time, not to mention horny as hell. At one point while we were talking, Terry leaned over the table and took my hand. It was almost like being a kid on my first date. I'll tell you, I wanted so badly to get into bed with this guy, but my conscience, or maybe it was just fear, either way, I just couldn't do it. But that didn't stop Terry. He had already begun his seduction. He started talking about how Harry doesn't know what a wonderful woman he has and doesn't appreciate me. Silly me, I ate it up. I was beginning to resent my own husband. In no time at all, Terry had convinced me that Harry was taking me for granted. God, Linda, that sounds like what I'm going through right now, Kathy said. That's why I'm telling you all this, Kathy. I want you to know what you're getting yourself into. Has this guy you're dating started talking about Bruce yet? No, not at all. Kathy stopped and thought about the answer she had just given. Well, I mean, not really. He was asking questions. You know, like, does your husband know how lucky he is? Something like that. Uh-huh. And of course, you're starting to wonder about that, right? Well, Kathy, it's happening without you even realizing it. When Harry left me, he said I'd been unhappy with him for over 2 months. I had no idea I was doing it. I was doing the same thing in the bedroom. I just couldn't bring myself to be passionate with a man who I thought was taking me for granted. I saw the light bulb go on in her friend's eyes as she continued her story. Think about it, Kathy. What kind of man has an affair with a married woman? Can you imagine Bruce doing it? Bruce? No, of course not. He would never do anything like that. Yeah, so why risk your marriage for someone who would? Kathy asked, while Kathy pondered what she had just said. Continuing her story, Linda said, Anyway, we had lunch again the following week, and it was getting harder and harder to stay faithful to Harry. The third time we had lunch, he almost convinced me to go back to his apartment with him. I could see that he was a little angry at all my excuses, and I knew that if I had another lunch with him, we would end up in bed together. As we were leaving the restaurant after our third lunch date, I mentioned that I needed to buy a new dress because Harry had invited me to celebrate our anniversary. I told him that we would probably go to a dance club that we used to go to. Harry talked a lot about how much fun we had there and how we danced the night away. Terry immediately seized the opportunity. He said he would be there to dance with me. I told him he better not. After all, it was our anniversary, and my husband might get mad if I danced with someone else. However, Terry acted arrogant and said it would serve Harry a lesson. He said, it'll show Harry that other men want you, and maybe it'll wake him up and appreciate you more. Oh my God, Linda, he really showed up, didn't he? Kathy whispered. Linda took another sip of coffee. He certainly did. Of course he did. I noticed him as soon as we walked in. Of course, I didn't dare say anything to him. Up until now, Harry and I had been having a great time. That is, until Terry came over and asked me to dance. And to make matters worse, he was completely ignoring Harry. In fact, he was downright rude to him. Harry, understandably, leaned his back against the wall and gave me an ultimatum, telling me I couldn't dance with him. Well, you know how stupid I can be sometimes. I got angry and said I would dance with him anyway. Harry told me he wouldn't be there when we got back from the dance floor. But people say things like that all the time. Who believes them? Kathy saw Linda's eyes fill with tears as she continued her story. When we started dancing, I told Terry that he shouldn't have acted like that in front of Harry. I asked him why he had to be so rude. He said he wanted to put Harry in his place. That made me angry, of course. Terry kept me very close on the dance floor. By then, however, I was more worried that Harry was watching us and would be even more enraged. In fact, I was so worried that I didn't even realize that the first dance was over, and we were on the second dance. When the dance was over, I told Terry not to ask again. I told him I was going to spend the rest of the evening with my husband. I headed back to the table and saw Terry following me. I asked him what he was doing. He said he wanted to apologize to Harry. When we got back to the table, Harry wasn't there. Terry sat down in his chair and said he would wait with me until he got back. I really don't think he was going to apologize at all. I think he wanted to pull Harry's chain a little more. Why? Kathy asked. Why would he want to do that? I thought about it, and I think he figured that since he hadn't managed to get me into bed yet, he would cause problems between Harry and me. I'm sure he was hoping I'd run up to him and cry on his shoulder. I think he thought he would comfort me, between the sheets, before the night was over. I decided Harry was in the men's room. I told Terry to go back to his table, but he kept stalling. When the waitress came over, he ordered our drinks. It was then that she asked if we wanted to open another tab. I asked what was wrong with the first bill. She said Harry had paid it before he left. Kathy, I swear I saw my whole life flash before my eyes, at least my married life. I couldn't believe he just left me there. Kathy's face expressed more and more grief as she told her story. Kathy shared her friend's pain, and her own emotions began to show. A lone tear escaped from Kathy's eye and flowed down her cheek. You don't have to tell me all this, Linda. Look at you, you're crying. Why don't we stop here? No, I want to tell you the whole story, Kathy. You need to know the whole story. It's important. So, where was I? Oh, yes, I know, Linda said, taking a deep breath. I immediately pulled out my cell phone and called Harry. I asked him to come back and pick me up. That's when he told me that he thought I was having an affair, and he had a good idea it was with Terry. He said he was going to pack up and leave, but he didn't know if he was coming back. Linda picked up a napkin. God, Kathy, that hit me like a ton of bricks, she said, wiping tears from her eyes. It was like someone had just turned on the lights and everything was suddenly in focus. Harry wasn't taking me for granted. Hell, he did everything he could to try and help. It was me. I was taking him for granted. Him and Jennifer, and the life we had built for ourselves. I realized I was risking my entire marriage for some... She paused, then continued. I asked Harry again to come back and pick me up, but he didn't, so I called a cab. What about Terry? What has he been doing all this time? Kathy asked. Oh, he wasn't going to give up. Not yet. He said Harry didn't deserve me and that I should go home with him. I told a bastard to drop dead, she said with a chuckle. Even after that, he had to try again. He followed me outside to wait for the cab. When the car pulled into the parking lot, he grabbed me and tried to kiss me. I hit him right in the balls with my knee. While he was hunched over in pain, I told him that if he ever tried to contact me again, I would file a sexual harassment suit. Kathy reached out and took her friend's hand, while Linda wiped away her tears. Anyway, when I got home, Harry was gone. I tried to call him, but his cell phone was off. Kathy, I swear I was so worried. All I could see was my marriage falling apart right before my eyes. My whole family, everything we've worked for, gone in smoke. I'll tell you, Kat, I've never been so scared in my life. The next day, I tried to call him at work, but he wouldn't talk to me. His secretary told me that he even ordered her not to let me see him if I went there. I was desperate, so I went over and talked to Andrea, our neighbor. Harry liked her and her husband, so I thought maybe he would talk to her.
Well, he did, but all he said was that he needed time to think about it, and he would call me in a couple of weeks. I knew that trying to push him would just work against me, so I decided to give him some space. It was the worst 2 weeks of my life. When Jennifer was around, I tried to stay strong and just told her that Daddy was out of town, but as soon as she wasn't around, I just cried. I thought I had really messed things up. Harry was so angry. I really didn't think he would come back to me, especially if he thought I was cheating on him.
Linda was crying now, remembering the pain she had been through. "I'm so sorry," she said to Kathy, "but it's just so hard to talk about, even now." She took a deep breath, then continued where she had left off. "As I was saying, eventually Harry called and said he was coming home. Kathy, I was so close to losing everything. Believe me, it made me realize what I had and how incredibly lucky I was. In the end, Kathy, love has to trump lust. I love Harry, and he loves me. As far as I'm concerned, there isn't a man in this world worth the risk of that." "Wow," Kathy said thoughtfully. "You're right. I don't know what I would do if my husband left me." "Have you ever told Harry the truth?" she asked. "Are you kidding me? As close as I came to losing him, I wasn't going to risk it happening again. Kathy, I live in constant fear that someday he'll find out. But since the day he came home, I've tried to be the best wife I could be. I no longer take him or our marriage for granted. Every day, I thank my lucky stars for what I have, and I show Harry how much I appreciate him with all the passion in my soul. All I can hope for is that it will be enough, if he ever finds out." Kathy squeezed Linda's hand encouragingly. "I'm so glad you told me your story. You kept me from making a big mistake, Linda. Thank you." The girls talked for a few more minutes, then made tentative plans for their next meeting before saying goodbye. Linda felt good and knew she had just saved her friend.
I'm not sure what to think of this situation. I'm not exactly the good guy in this, but I hope you guys can give me some insight. So we met through a shared friend who I'll call Harley. GF and I started dating in March 2025, and everything felt really natural at the start. She quickly became attached to me and said she loved me after about 2-3 weeks of dating, something I wasn't prepared for. I liked her a lot, but I couldn't bring myself to say it back so soon, as it's nipped me in the butt before. I explained my reasonings to her, and she seemed to understand. The next day, she's out on a girls' night and FaceTimes me. Her and friends are super drunk, and one of them is saying, "Say that you love her," over and over. I said, "Have a fun night, dear. I'll talk to you later." I ended up taking a tiny step back after this because I felt like she lied about understanding my perspective and told her friends her true feelings. We would see each other about 3-4 times a week. She would sleep over at my dorm quite often. And after a couple weeks, I think sometime mid-April, I was able to confidently say that I loved her. When she wasn't around, I was often hanging out with Harley, my close friend since the beginning of September, who was also GF's best friend, hence how we met. Harley went to college with me and lived down the hall from me, while GF lived at home about 20 minutes away and works at a restaurant. She did not go to college. Harley and I got along really well and would do things like chores, get food, and study together. I'm a pretty heavy drug user, and I thought it was good for me to be hanging out with someone that I do responsible things with. Well, around early May, everyone is drinking in my dorm. GF is at work. Very good vibes all around. Harley is a very touchy and flirtatious person, and although my heart belonged to GF, Harley and I were definitely becoming attracted to each other. She would say things like, "I wish I could find a man that takes care of me the way you do for GF." Anyways, that drunk night, we cuddled under a blanket while everyone was talking. Nothing promiscuous, and in my head, I justified it by saying that this is just how Harley is with friends. Things like this continued on, but without any physical touch. And for the last week of school, I really had to put GF on the back burner and was spending almost every day with Harley in order to do well in classes, which went well. We go home mid-May and the summer begins. Both my parents and GF's parents will not let us stay the night, so that was difficult because of the routine we were used to, but not really a problem for me. We lived 50 minutes apart and we saw each other 1 to 2 times a week during the day. Harley was asking me if she could come to my house to see me, so I asked GF and she said it was fine. Harley and I just had a normal day, grabbed lunch, watched a show, no lines crossed, no nothing. About a month later, I start staying at my friend's house so that GF can stay the night. She comes over, we fooled around a couple times at night and then again in the morning, and then both of us go to work. Later that day, GF tells me that she's going out with Harley and some female coworkers after work. I told her to have fun and to call me at some point. I end up falling asleep playing video games and missed her call at 2 a.m. The next day, everything seems normal. I say good morning, she says she loves me. I go about my work day, she goes about hers. She calls me around 8 p.m. and says, "I have to tell you something, and I'm so sorry. Last night, Harley and I had a threesome with one of our coworkers. We just caught a vibe, and I don't know what happened. I was so drunk. I'm crushed as my heart still belonged to her, and I also can't believe Harley would be a part of this and wouldn't stop her or text me saying anything at all. My world flipped upside down, and I immediately said that I couldn't be with her anymore. She started to beg, saying that it was the biggest mistake of her life and that she doesn't know what happened or how she could do this, that it's the worst thing she's ever done, and if she could take it back, she would. I said I would meet with her in person and hear her out. She came over, and of course, being the bitch I am, I saw only the good in her and forgave her because she sounded so remorseful at the time. We ended up having some really good hate sex that night, and she promised 1,000 times over that she would never do anything like this again. I explained to her that as good as we are together, this relationship is on a trial period until I feel like she's been transparent enough. The next day comes around and she goes to work, and I feel terrible now that she's gone. My head starts racing, and I start wondering about details. She comes over that night, and I'm asking her questions, and she gives me slight glimpses and says she was so drunk she really can't remember. The next day, and I call Harley, and she apologizes, whatever, it's not about her. I almost feel like she was trying to break us up, though. Harley tells me that they were taking shot after shot, and it's all a bit blurry, but the three of them all had sex in the shower together, and that I should definitely break up with her.
Of course, being a bitch and only seeing what she showed me, the sweet and good parts of her, I didn't break up with her and let her explain herself further. She said that there's no excuse for what she did, but she was sad. She felt like I wanted to be with Harley more than I wanted to be with her. I decided to be honest and own up to what I did that drunk night, and also how we did flirt often and that none of it was promiscuous. Immediately, her demeanor changes completely, and she went to the bathroom for about 20 minutes and came out saying she was going to drive home. I convinced her to stay, and we ended up being okay. About a week later, I get a little worm in my brain that tells me to check her phone, because I told her to tell me when she works with that guy that she cheated on me with, and she hadn't told me once. While she was sleeping, I unlocked her phone and found a 3-minute video that she sent to her friends. The day after we made up and had hate sex, she worked a shift with this guy, and she went into detail on how they flirted towards the end of the shift. She ended up driving him home and said, "If I was a shitty person, I would have just broken up with my BF and started fucking you." Well, I'm crushed again. And again, I let her whisper sweet nothings into my ear after confronting her on the phone. Boy, she was so good at that. The way she talked to me sounded so genuine that I couldn't help but have her over again that night and make up again. Wow, writing this all out is starting to sound really pathetic. After this, we had about 2 months of really good boyfriend-girlfriend stuff, like house sitting for 2 weeks for my friend, where we made a lot of great memories. School starts up again, and some of my friends hate her for what she did, so she didn't come around too often, and I was sneaking into her house at night so we could sleep together. Her mom caught us one night, and so we weren't seeing each other at night anymore, and we would go on lunch dates and go to the gym and take hikes every other day. This last Friday, after I just paid the bill for dinner for us and her sister, and they dropped me off, she sends me a text, "Hi baby, I didn't say yes yet, but my girl coworker is having a birthday party tonight, and she asked if I could DD, and I just wanted to run it by you first." I said that I'm not going to force her to do anything, but I feel really uncomfortable with her going out with coworkers because of what happened 3 months ago. She continues to give reasons why I should trust her and then starts saying things like, "I don't think you'll ever fully trust me again." To which I said, I just need time and consistency. And I reiterated that I'm not going to force her to do anything, but that actions have consequences. She decided that she's going to go out anyways. She's texting me the whole night she's out. At 12:32, she texts me, "I love you, Papa. I miss you." Red heart. At 2 a.m., I decide to check her location, and I see that it's different from the one she originally told me she'd be sleeping at. I start calling her to no response. I look up the address and see it belongs to the parents of the guy she cheated on me with. Of course, I freak out and start spam calling her. She picks up. "What?" she says angrily. "Baby, where are you? FaceTime me." Respectfully, I'm holding my friend's hair out of the toilet. I'm not going to FaceTime or take a picture. I just need reassurance. I'm not doing this right now. And then she turns off her phone. Immediately, I block her on everything except messages and delete all our photos.
Any advice on how to deal with this pain would be greatly appreciated. I sent her a barrage of texts saying things like, "I can't believe you're capable of doing this to me. This is the most disgusting thing anyone has ever done to me. You owe me a conversation." I'm up all night feeling like I've been stabbed in the chest. She doesn't text me back until 9 a.m. and calls me, saying things like, "I'm so sorry, you have every right to be mad at me. If I quit the restaurant job, this never would have happened. I just like him because he picked me first." She told me that she knew she was going to cheat on me before I even paid for dinner. This was premeditated cheating. She wasn't even drunk. I'm just so upset over how she did this. She lied to me for so long, saying she loved me and that she wanted to have my kids one day. I really believed her. But looking back, I just feel so stupid. I asked her why she wouldn't just break up with me if she knew I was going to cheat. Because I just couldn't lose you. Like, the way that I caught her and how cruel she was to me, continued to lie to me even when I had all the evidence. I don't know, I just am at a loss for words, and even typing this out hurts because I just can't wrap my head around how you can lie so comfortably, coming up with a whole fake situation when you could have just broken up with me. Well, I asked for the $200 that I paid at dinner and to give me my clothes back. I'm going to try my best to be cordial when I see her on Friday, but currently it still really stings. So much so that I spent an hour typing this all out. I hope you guys can give me some insight on what I should do. I want to claim power back, but I guess I can't? I don't know. Any advice would be helpful.
Never did I dream to post my cheating story here online asking how to make things right. Well, here I am, confessing everyone about my broken heart and trusting. My wife and I, Sarah and I, have been together for 10 years. We are married for 8 years. We met in college and were each other's first and only. I thought we had something rare, something beautiful. But as the tale of my devious cheating sets in, I realize maybe I was one of the few who thought so. It all began when Sarah joined a new job. She was unable to gel well with the new colleagues, partly because she was naturally shy. So eventually she started with quite an attractive group of females, some of whom were single or divorced, some were even in relationships but were not married. I was pretty glad to see her making friends indeed. But soon enough, this tale of cheating began to take shape as she started going out for booze, partying, and staying out late. I felt getting more and more concerned about this new trend, but at the same time, I did not want to scold her nor appear controlling. This new lifestyle began to take tolls on our relations in the bedroom. Sarah, who rarely started intimacy before, became even more distant, too tired or disinterested. Then there was Mark, a new manager at her company. Sarah admired him and was not shy about talking about how well he could solve problems at work. First, nothing came of it in my mind, but as this cheating story progressed, my concern grew. I asked her why she was so obsessed with him, to which she dismissed the whole thing and said there is no cause for worry. Then came a conversation that I never had in mind. Sarah asked me, "Do you ever regret not being more promiscuous with women?" I simply said no. She is all I need. I almost saw a glimpse of sadness in her eyes, but she changed the subject quickly. This is when the real twist in my cheating story began. Sarah started suggesting we open up our marriage to spice things up. I was floored. This wasn't like her at all. I asked her if all of this had to do with Mark. She said it wasn't, but she felt she missed out by being with only one person and not wanting to lose me. I cautiously and perhaps more naively agreed to her proposal. We set ground rules, not bringing any home, and it all seemed wonderful. Little did I know that it was just the start of a rather painful chapter in our story of infidelity. Sarah went around dating, and sometimes she even indulged in one-night stands for the following year. She even went as far as having a full-fledged relationship with Mark. Meanwhile, I made efforts to adapt to this new setup, but I could not, in fact, be successful. I dated her, and yet could not even manage to have one-night stands. It felt like something wrong to do. Sarah asked me if I was doing all right, but she never changed her behavior. It was the pure, special innocence of our marriage, but she slowly began to kill me inside with this. Then came another twist in my cheating story. Hannah.
She was this awesome woman from South Korea. Our conversations went so smoothly, and her smile could forget all of my pain. She was making that intimacy unlike anything I'd ever had before. For the first time in years, I felt truly desired. Initially, she found it cute that I had found someone, but as time passed, her attitude changed.
Just like that, Sarah turns around and now starts coming in to surprise me dinner, cleaning the house, dropping off lunch at my office, even taking intimacy as our initiative. Too late. Part of me had died. I asked her what had caused this sudden change in behavior. She said she wanted to prove that she still loved me and was happy with me. I burst out laughing and asked about Mark, her friends, and the one-night stands. She could not respond and went to bed in tears. The very next day, Sarah came to me and said she wants to shut down our open marriage. She says it was a miserable mistake and that she regrets everything. According to her, she ended with me because of friends and Mark who told her that she needed more experiences. But now, she knows this was something unique what we had, and she destroyed something precious. This was another tragic turning point in my cheating story. She says I might never see her again as my wife, whereby she broke into tears. She quit her job, cut all ties to her friends, even broke off with Mark, and the entire charade was a scam to win me back. The harm, though, was done. All these efforts were merely proof of what I'd established for Hannah. There was something about Hannah that brought to life parts of me, which honestly hadn't been stirred in quite some time by Sarah. Now here I was in something I never wanted, the cheating tale I never asked for. We went into couples therapy, hoping somehow we'd find a way to fix things. In the first session, Sarah vomited up guilt, stating how her friends had guided her down this path. The therapist pointed out the damage done to this approach with regards to relationships and marriage. Sarah said she was panicked over seeing the happiness of my relationship with Hannah. For me, well, her friends had advised her to just put up with it, so she found out who was the bad influence in her life. I disclosed my participation in the scandal and my continued affair with Hannah. The therapist said nothing concrete would be achieved till Hannah stayed and brought up the topic for consideration of another session. Sarah and I moved to separate apartments for the time being. It was in our second meeting that Sarah shared further excruciating truths about her relationship with Mark. They did not cross physical lines before our opening marriage, but had touched themselves in front of each other. This was a further blow on an already fragile heart of mine. She cried and begged for forgiveness, explaining how she had been nothing but a distraction for Mark, only made her betrayal harder to bear. As this cheating scandal emerged, Sarah suggested we should leave and start anew. Still, I wasn't there yet. It needed time for it all to sink in. Meantime, one of the girlfriends Sarah's been dating had herself gotten into a pregnancy scare. She spilled Mark on something that would probably end up getting him fired. Her apology to me after hearing her buddy was part of Sarah's wrongdoing, trying to get out of the mess she helped create. One day, returning home with some belongings, I found Sarah amongst our wedding photos. "Look," she said, "Mark sent me a message. He ripped into me for exposing him." She said she had done it to rid us of the secret's power over us, give our marriage a fighting chance. But she knew that was too little, too late. I told Sarah that I was ending marriage counseling and seeking individual therapy instead. She wept uncontrollably. I was numb. I had previously consulted with a divorce lawyer, unsure whether there was anything left worth saving in this cheating story. It's pretty obvious that she's desperate to win me back, but I no longer see the same future for myself as she does. When I left that day, Sarah was screaming her head off. What did Hannah have that she didn't, she wanted to know. If she can't see it now, I guess our marriage is really over. This is a cheating story of consequences. My wife has to face the after effects of her deeds, trying to unwind her mistakes. Life doesn't work that way. Perhaps one day she will be a better partner, but it won't be with me. She will always remember what she did and regret it. That is more than the many people get from their own cheating stories.
Based on this, am I crazy to try this again, and is it worthwhile at 60 years of age?
My personal story. Yes, it is a real story, and discusses my cheating wife and the impact on a lifetime relationship. I have read a lot of the stories, and there are some definite heartbreaking stories that saddened me to read them. My story is also pretty sad, but I do not think that I am able to convey the same level of bitterness and betrayal that some of the other writers and submitters have experienced. My story, of course, is sad, but also perhaps gives a different perspective that might be worth listening to. I am not sure why I am writing about events that took place so many years ago, but maybe it is just a way to show people that good things happen with time. And time and patience does seem to heal most things. I know this is a long post, but I think the history is important to know so people understand what happened. And that generates my question and request for advice. Based on this, am I crazy to try this again, and is it worthwhile at 60 years of age? I met my wife, and we were together for almost 10 years, which includes 7 years of marriage. We have 2 children who are now fully grown and have lives of their own. My wife and I met on a blind date, and it was awkward the entire night. My wife is an attractive woman with a vivacious personality. Me, on the other hand, am somewhat reserved and would not probably be considered as a head-turner. I'm not that bad on the eyes, but do not in any way claim to be a great heartbreaker. I am also on the quiet side, and my wife always has been the person that people noticed at a party or an event. She also has a kind heart and is very empathetic to people and always looks for the good. Strangely enough, she seemed to like me, and our relationship grew. Finally, we got married and began to build our life together. Our life was actually going very well. We had a nice home, good finances, supportive families, good friends, and our kids were doing well. But as with many of these stories, there is a catalyst that can change everything. Our catalyst was a pregnancy. We had 2 young kids at the time and wanted to go for a 3rd child to have an even larger and happier family. We never had too many concerns in the bedroom, and we quickly had number 3 on the way. I was elated when my wife told me the news, and we waited about 3 months before we told the rest of our families about the new addition. During the next 3 months, we were busy with planning for the nursery, working with our kids on getting ready for the new baby, looking at finances, etc. It is perhaps the saddest day of my life when my wife called me to tell me that something was wrong with the baby. We got her to the hospital, and unfortunately and tragically, my wife had a miscarriage at the 6-month mark. We were both traumatized, and the trip back home the next day was absolute silence and sadness. My wife went to bed that night and did not come out of that room for the next 3 days. She was absolutely overcome with sadness and depression. For some reason, she also believed that she had failed me as my wife. I told her again and again that this was an act of God. She did not do anything wrong, and we could try again when the time was right. But she did not believe me and still continued to blame herself for the whole situation and sunk into a depression. It took about 6 months, but she appeared to be coming out of her funk and seemed to be getting back to her normal self. We were both doing well with the kids, she seemed to have her personality back, and we were talking about the future. She also started to exercise and get back into shape. She really did look incredible, and I did enjoy giving her compliments and telling her how much I loved her. During this time, she also talked to me about getting a part-time job. It was not so much about the money, but more of a way for her to get out of the house and stay involved. I told her that was a great idea and encouraged her to think about what she wanted to do and to go for it. To my surprise, she got a job as a waitress and bartender at a restaurant right down the street from us. She has a degree in business, but did not want to get a white-collar job. She thought the hours and responsibilities would be too much with our home and family, but this would get her up and moving. She would be able to earn some money for herself and feel like she was contributing. Plus, she said that she needed to work and talk with adults, and she felt this would get her out of her isolation at home. Once again, I told her that was great news and she should go for it.
Now, I noted earlier that my wife is an attractive woman. I should also add that she is a voluptuous woman and was looking really great with her level of fitness and weight loss. She has never had a problem with attracting interest from men, but she also has always been loyal to me, and I never had reason to doubt her.
She started her job and was doing well. She worked 2-3 nights per week and usually worked on a Friday or Saturday. I was somewhat uncomfortable with her work outfits because she wore clothing that accentuated her figure. It was tasteful, but I admit that I wished she would be more conservative. She laughed at me on this and told me it was a great way to bring in more tips and perhaps her outfits would spur more romantic interest on my part. The owner of the restaurant was a good man and ran a good business. He was fair with his workers, and his family also all worked there. His son, to be honest, was somewhat of an arrogant jerk. He had been born into wealth and made no bones about living a nice lifestyle. He was about the same age as my wife, and I must admit he was a very good-looking guy. He was married, but had no children yet. His wife is a lovely and wonderful person also. She also worked at the restaurant and handled the books. The son handled all of the catering and special events. At least, he was supposed to do that. My understanding is that he was somewhat lazy and constantly dumped his responsibilities off on his family and coworkers. What he really liked to do was lift weights, work out, drive around in his fancy car, live off his family, and basically talk and brag about how great he was with women. I am not sure how his wife dealt with all of this. He was admittedly a flashy guy, but the guy did not impress me in the least. I could tell from the first time I met him that he was not much more than a big-mouth windbag. My wife several times had commented to me several times that the guy was very good-looking in an exciting way, but he was an arrogant toe-rag and she could not stand him. But she had to work with him and kept her mouth shut to get along. She did work with him on a consistent basis, and they then began to have some type of friendship forming. I was not overly concerned, but did tell her that this guy was trouble and she should be careful around him. During the next several months, my wife did begin to act peculiar. She kept a close eye on her phone, claimed she had to work late, and began to be absent for long periods of time, claiming that she was shopping or was running errands. She also began to ignore me to some extent, and I also thought she was not as attentive to the kids as she had been in the past. My wife is a good mother, but she seemed to be impatient at this time and had no concern with turning over more of the responsibilities to me. It was a challenge, since I also work full-time and am the primary breadwinner of the family. I did tell her of my concern, but she told me things were going okay and I was seeing problems where there were not any. One night my wife and I were alone, and it was fairly late. I made a move on her, and she shut me down cold. I asked her what the problem was, and with that she started crying and shaking. I asked her what the problem was, and then received the shock of my life. My wife told me she had been seeing the owner's son for almost 6 months, the relationship had turned sexual, she loved him, we were done, and she was going to leave me to move in with him. She also told me that she had been deeply unhappy since the miscarriage and felt that something in our marriage had died. She needed a fresh start and she needed to be free to live her life. She also told me that she loved this guy and he could make her happy. I was obviously pretty shook up and asked her to reconsider. She told me it was too late for that and would be moving in with her new boyfriend into an apartment they had secured. I asked her about the kids, and she told me it would be best if they stayed with me in the house to maintain a good home, and she would be there to see them. It is an understatement to say that I was absolutely shocked and flabbergasted at what had taken place. My wife told me that she did not understand the surprise, since she thought I was well aware of her unhappiness with our marriage, and the miscarriage had been the final nail in the proverbial coffin. I was not pleased when I learned who she had a relationship with. It's one thing to get the complete shafting from your wife, and another to find out she was ditching you for a guy who was really a dirtbag. I do not want to make a generality, but there does seem to be some truth that so many women are attracted to guys like this. I am not sure if it was his looks, flashy lifestyle, or his big mouth, but apparently she was interested in him, and it took off from there.
I was also shocked that she had been involved with him for 6 months without my knowing. They apparently had been having sex in his car, the restaurant, hotels, his house, our home when nobody was there, etc. It was a real betrayal, and I was deeply hurt. But I thought about what I would do and maintained my perspective and composure. What followed was several weeks of tears, sadness, cajoling, and really just a whole lot of crap. My family, and especially my dad, was furious and began saying terrible things about her. My wife's side of the family was also upset with the situation, but did not display the same level of animosity and bitterness that my side did. I actually had to intervene with my father and ask him to stop with the vitriolic insults against my wife. She was still the mother of his son's children, and he needed to show her respect as a grandfather. My father actually agreed and commended me on my approach to this whole situation. I told him that I did not believe there was any benefit for me by seeking revenge on my soon-to-be ex-wife. She was the mother of my children, and I would need to have an amicable relationship with her for the sake of our kids. Do not get me wrong, I would have loved to be an SOB, but thought long and hard about it. I think that I made the correct choice, and in retrospect would have done the same thing. As I said, it was a rough couple of weeks, but she did move out and into an apartment with this guy. She did see her children and tried to be active in their lives. I also felt terrible for the wife of this guy, and she was mortified by what had taken place. She did leave the restaurant to get another job and did file for divorce. I would see her in the local grocery store on occasion and always wished her well. She was originally from Pennsylvania and eventually moved back to her home. I understand she did get remarried to a solid man and now has a good life and children. I wish her only the best. There is no question in my mind that her splitting with this guy is the best thing that ever happened to her. The divorce itself went smoothly. She did get some money out of me due to the division of assets. I did agree to pay some alimony support for a short period of time, which I think ended at 6 months. To me, it was a cheap way to get out of the situation. In fact, I probably would have agreed to any financial demand she would have made in order to be done with the situation. I was retained as the primary custodial parent, and she had 50-50 visitation. I told her that she was always free to stop and see her children. She did do that on many occasions, and things appeared to be somewhat stable. I also think she liked to see me when she came to visit the kids, but maybe that was wishful thinking on my part. My wife did not make a lot of money, but did make a small child support payment each month. To her credit, she did her best and never missed a payment when it came to her children. In retrospect, there is no doubt in my mind that my wife was going through some type of personal crisis due to the miscarriage and the aftermath of it. I am not some great prize, but there is no way my wife in her right mind would have done what she did. But I was powerless, and there was not much I could do. The day we signed the divorce papers to make it final was surreal. Things had been amicable, but it was still tough. We met at her attorney's office, and it was a sad affair for me. I was saddened that she seemed so happy about the situation, and she was there with her dirtbag boyfriend. She almost seemed giddy about it, which really shocked me. We'd been together for many years and had a family together. This was the only time I ever felt like she disrespected me during the whole divorce, but I let it roll off because there was nothing left to prove. The marriage was over and we needed to move forward. When I signed the papers, I did see some regret in her eyes. I do think she had a look of shock on her face since I remember what I said to her. I must admit that I'm proud of what I said and how well it came off. I'm not an actor, but on this day I did have a flair for the dramatic. I had written it down and practiced it until I had it down, and this is what I said. I am, of course, sad about this. I thought we had a good life and were a good team. I apologize to you if you think I failed you because I was not able to bring you the happiness you wanted, and you thought somebody else would give you a better chance at happiness. I do think the miscarriage had a lot to do with this than we realize. When tragedies take place, people either get closer and stronger or there is separation and loss. I am sad and find it ironic that what should have been a happy experience for us is what destroyed us in the end. But that is in the past now. I want you to have a happy life, and we can work together to give our kids the happiest and most stable life we can.
The room was quiet when I said this. Her face looked stark white, and I did see regret in her eyes. With that, I got up, shook her hand, wished her well, said goodbye, and her attorney told me he would send me a copy of the papers. Things went okay at first. She was living with this guy, but within several months, chinks began to appear in their relationship. He apparently drank too much, was pretty much shiftless, lived off his family, and really was not much of a man. He also apparently had a wandering eye and was already lining up his next conquest. She was apparently a younger girl who worked in another restaurant, which was also owned by his father. Of interest is that I continued to order food from the original establishment. The owner would always greet me when I came in for my order and always had a look of embarrassment on his face. I would never stay in the place because that would have been awkward. My ex-wife was working there and was living with his son. If you toss in that he deserted his wife also, the owner was not pleased. He was a family man and told me once that he did not understand where he went wrong with his son. Of course, and to no surprise, things began to go downhill with this new, exciting power couple. They were fighting all of the time and things were not going well for my ex-wife. I think my ex-wife was seeing that perhaps I was not that bad of an option, and things are not always greener on the other side. With me, she had a solid man who put her and the kids first. I was a good husband, and perhaps she had made a really poor decision. She did call me several times to lament about her life, but I told her that I was not the person to talk with about this. She answered that I had been her best friend, and she could always talk to me. I told her that had been true, but things had changed, and I did not feel comfortable being part of the discussion, and she needed to work things out on her own with her new partner. I did not want to be involved in her relationships. She did agree, but I think that I could sense some hurt and regret in her voice when she hung up after I told her this. One night she had the kids over at her apartment with her dirtbag boyfriend to have a sleepover and watch some movies. That evening I had an upset call from her. Apparently this guy had drank too much and was frustrated that the kids did not want to watch one of his shows. I'm not sure what the show was, but the kids apparently had no interest. So he got mad and slapped my youngest daughter because he thought she was being snotty. This was a hard slap and left a mark on her cheek. So I get a call and went right over there. My first inclination was to call the cops, and maybe I should have, but I did go over there to get my kids. I took my kids and left. I told him that I heard anything else from him about this, my next call would be to the cops, and then he would have real trouble. I do admit that I got some pleasure out of telling my ex-wife, "And so this is what you left me for." She did not say anything but did hang her head. I think she was ashamed at what had taken place. I'm not sure if that meant she regretted the divorce, but I do think she realized what she had done and was regretful. Lo and behold, later that night I get a knock at the door, and there she is, sobbing, and was very upset. I did let her come in, and she told me that she had broken up with her boyfriend and wanted to come home. Now, I thought long and hard for several minutes and told her that I loved her and we had history, but I could not do that. With everything that had taken place, I did not think it was a good idea for her to come back, and there were just too many sad memories. I would never have left the mother of my children alone on the street. She did come in, and she did call her parents. I took her there to stay. My former father-in-law met me at the door and thanked me. He told me that I had always been a good man and a good husband. He appreciated that I had put the kids first and did look after the safety of his daughter, as my ex-wife. I did tell him that I would always love his daughter. Maybe things did not go the way we wanted, but I would not let harm come to her. To this day, I'm proud of what I did on this night and what I decided to do to protect my kids and, in the end, my ex-wife. She lived at her parents' house for about a year until she could get back on her feet. She did get a good job and moved into her own place. She was always a good mother, and her old vitality and spark returned. It was not perfect, but there was some sense of normalcy. She did have a string of relationships that did not go anywhere, and I think she was taken advantage of several times. Several times she would say to me that I was the best relationship she ever had, and nobody else could compare. Maybe that was a lot of cheap talk, but I did like to hear it. All that being said, nothing romantic happened again between us, and I retained a cordial and respectful relationship with her. I could have been with her again if I wanted, but would not take that step. In my heart I wanted to, but was basically scared of being hurt again. During this time I had dated several women, but nothing serious from the relationship perspective. Several of them wanted more from me, but I was not going to go there. I was focused on work, my kids, and had really no interest in another marriage or a long-term relationship. There were just too many bad memories, and I decided that going solo was the best route for me. The years did fly by. My kids did well, attended college, had good careers, got married, and started families. I would see my ex-wife at family events on a regular basis. She would always ask me if I was seeing anybody, and it would always come around if there was still a chance for us to get back together. I always told her no, because in life some things stick and you cannot go away from them. She would always look sad and told me that her decision to leave me was the worst decision and mistake she ever made. She told me there is not a day that goes by when she doesn't think about what if. She also told me it was especially hard for her at events like weddings, birthday parties, and other family events. She told me that the toughest days for her, from this perspective, was at the funerals for her mother and father when they died. She was greatly saddened when she saw me there, but I was not there as her husband and partner. She knew that I was a strong man and good husband to her, but on these days she felt alone and had felt great regret. She also felt this way at the weddings for both of our children. She thought they would have been great days that we would have shared together. She asked me if I ever felt the same way. My answer has been that experience was sad for me, but I decided to move forward and not look back. I always felt that her regret was ironic, since she was so sure that true happiness was with a new boyfriend.
We are now pushing 60, and I was thinking about hanging it up at work and moving somewhere warm, or at least for the cold months. My kids support me and do love their mother. The last time I talked to my ex-wife before moving was at a birthday party for one of our grandchildren. She asked to speak to me alone, and we stepped outside. She then became very emotional and upset. She always thought there was a chance that we would get back together. My moving away would signify the absolute end, and that she had experienced a lifetime of regret for having failed as a wife. I told her so many years had gone past and that she should not feel that way. I had nothing but respect and admiration for her. She then asked if she could potentially come visit me. I told her that I did not know, but would think about it. I admit that every single time I looked into her beautiful green eyes, my heart would melt. On this day, she looked exceptionally beautiful to me, and the years had been very kind to her. On this day, I must admit that regardless of what had taken place before, I never felt more intense love for her than I did on this day, at this moment. At this point in my life, I thought that maybe I would welcome having a relationship with her again. I would not get remarried, but what did I really have to lose at this point? She did make me happy at one time, and my love for her had never went away. At this point of time in our lives, maybe we can go forward. Update. I have been living in the Carolinas for the winter, and my ex-wife did come to see me. Crazy, I know, but all of the old feelings are still there. She stayed at my place, and we went and did many things together. I'm pleased to report that maybe we are older, but learned that we still do well together with that special time. She was there for a weekend, but it stretched into 2 weeks, and then into a month. One night she started to cry and sob because of what happened literally years ago. She told me that the past several weeks had brought her great happiness, and she was so sorry for what had happened. She told me that she constantly thought about what if, and if she had wasted her life looking for some type of utopian relationship that cannot exist. I told her that was all in the past, and maybe the time had come for us to move on and reconsider having a future together. I told her that I always loved her, my feelings for her had never died, and maybe she would like to come down and be with me permanently. I told her that I was not ready for marriage again, but did it really make a difference at this point in our lives? She agreed, actually never left my home, and things have been going great. The kids had a look of absolute shock on their faces when we told them, but they were also very happy for us. My youngest daughter, though, told me she was not really surprised, because she knew that my love for her mother had never died, and she had a feeling that things were not over. Some people reading this may think I'm crazy for doing this again after so many years, but at this point in our lives, there is only love and respect. What happened so many years ago is in the past. Now when I see my wife, and I admit that I always considered her to be my wife, I only feel love and affection. I think things will get even better, and hopefully we will have good years ahead as we head into old age. She really made a bad decision, but that is in the past. I think we both faced the consequences, but I look forward to life and moving forward. Perhaps it is hokey, but one thing is important to me. I always thought we were writing a book together, but was saddened that we would never get a chance to finish it. I'm pleased that we now have another chance to finish writing that book and including the final chapters. Would my wife cheat again? I do not think she would at this stage of our lives, but age and experience has shown me that all people are a mixed bag. There is good and bad in all of us, and one action or decision does not make or break a person. I have regrets also. My regret is that I always loved my wife, and I let sad feelings dictate what I decided to do. Maybe I should have just recognized the fact that she is a human being and made a bad decision. Perhaps I should have given this a shot earlier, and things might have been better. I do think about what if also, but I'm glad we have this second chance. With that, let me conclude, and hopefully I have a perspective that some of you have been able to consider. TLDR. This story is completely true and addresses how and why my wife cheated on me after a personal crisis. We then went through a divorce and does talk about my feelings and experiences over many years.